Hello, everybody, and happy Human Rights Day to all. Let me welcome you to this UN Human Rights Chief Navi Pillay's and Google Plus Hangout. My name is Rishmawi. I am the Chief of the Rule of Law and Equality in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and I am a human rights lawyer. So a very welcome to you all in this hangout. We have here with us today a number of very, very interesting participants, and no less than the High Commissioner himself, and we are joined in several parts of the world to celebrate Human Rights Day. I will ask first the High Commissioner to introduce herself, and then I will go to the colleagues of continents to tell us who they are. High Commissioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Navi Pillay, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. I'm very happy to be hanging out with you on this day.
Well, very happy to hang out with you, High Commissioner. So let's go to India. Harpreet, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Harpreet Kaur, the South Asia researcher and representative for the Business and Human Rights Resource Center. I'm joining the Hangout from New Delhi, India. I participated in the very first Make My Voice Count Google Plus Hangout, where we discussed ways to ensure effective participation in processes to prevent and mitigate business activities, their negative impacts on human rights. Happy to be hanging out with you all.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, thank you. Claudia, can we go to you in Brazil now?
Olá, sou Claudia Pereira.
Hello, I am Claudia Pereira.
Eu participei no segundo encontro de inclusão e participação da pessoa com deficiência.
I participated in the second handout series on inclusion and participation of the person with disabilities.
São Paulo, Brasil.
I'm speaking of São Paulo, Brazil.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, Bola, for the interpretation. Can we go to you, Ojot, now? One of our two male participants in this hangout, Ojot, and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Your Excellency, High Commissioner. It's a great opportunity to share this hangout session with you. And thank you, Mona. It's nice to see you again. I'm Ojot Miru Ujuru, former minority fellow, and at the moment a research candidate on minority rights at the University of Bradford, joining this hangout session from Bradford in the UK. Thank you.
Wonderful to see you, Ojot. Ojot was one of our minority fellows in the Office of the High Commissioner. Wonderful to see you. And now, may I ask you, Trushar, to introduce yourself as well? Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Trushar. I work at BBC News in London. And I work in a particular unit within the BBC newsroom called the UGC and Social Media Hub. UGC means user-generated content. And so I'm part of the team in the BBC newsroom that deals with a lot of content that gets sent into us directly by our audiences across the world, whether that's pictures, videos, story ideas, or eyewitness accounts. So looking forward to this hangout.
Wonderful, wonderful. Of course, and we have you all, the audience, joining us worldwide, watching this hangout on the United Nations Human Rights Google Plus web page and on YouTube channel. You may send your questions and share your views via different social media platforms. During this hangout, you can still tweet us with questions. We already received a number of questions. You can tweet us with questions using the hashtag on VoiceCount or on Ask Rights. And we are also live tweeting this hangout, which you can follow at UN Rights Wire. Okay, thank you very much. So let me begin by asking the High Commissioner, our High Commissioner Navi Pillay. High Commissioner, This year is focusing, the theme of this year is inclusion and the right to participate in public life. Why this theme? Why are we focusing on this theme?
Well, we commemorate Human Rights Day on 10th December because on 10th December 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted, which states that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. The right to participation in public life is not only a human right in itself, it is also an empowering right to enable everyone to know, demand, and defend human rights. And in recent years, we saw that millions of people went out onto the streets to make their voice count. Some demanding civil and political rights, some demanding economic, social, and cultural rights. They are asking for an end to a situation where decisions are taken without even consulting them. They are asking for their right to participate fully in important decisions and policies affecting their daily lives. No one should be excluded from societies and denied the right to participation simply because they are female or belong to a minority or worship a certain religion or because they are gay, have a disability, or have political beliefs, are migrants, or belong to a certain racial or ethnic group. Yet we all know, as a matter of fact, that many are still being left out in different parts of the world across all regions. That's why it's timely that this year, on Human Rights Day, we all speak out for inclusion and the right to participation. I'm encouraged that millions have joined us to make their voice count for human rights through social media and many other means they found suitable.
Well, thank you so much for High Commissioner for reminding us how important it is to participate and to claim one's rights. And of the people who've been claiming these rights, as we saw in the last, particularly in the last few years, in the last 2 years. Let me turn to you, Ojo, and ask the first question. A group of people that we think about when we think of human rights is minorities. And of course, minorities have some cultural specificities, and I'm thinking here language. How in the age of social media and different medias, how can minorities actually use these social medias and their languages to claim their rights?
You're right. I think this is very important question. Minority languages have been squeezed from all angles by powerful forces. Socially and culturally, what you've mentioned, the mainstream media and also the cultural industries have really squeezed minority languages. Economically, you have also forces of globalization that have actually made minority languages less important and less attractive to learn. And politically, since the invention of the nation state, the idea of creating one country out of one people through one language, I mean, this has also led to extinction of many minority languages, sometimes by force, in some cases through laissez-faire language policies. So I think in order to protect and promote minority languages, we need legislations and policies that go beyond mere recognition of those rights to active support for those rights. And at the same time, we also need economic support for minorities, because we know that minorities are the poorest of the poor, and they cannot do this alone. They would need some support. And finally, and most importantly, I think the new digital media has presented ample opportunities for minorities. actually to promote their languages. This time you can create video, audio from your room and distribute it all over the world. So I think this is an opportunity that minorities can make use of, you know.
Thank you very much, Trushar. Thank you for that. Sorry, Ujo. I said Trushar because I was actually thinking of asking Trushar a question. Tell us from what we just heard from Ujo, the importance of media. I'm thinking in particular of social media. How can social media, what role the social media can play in promoting public participation? And how can this role, you think?
Yeah, I think one of the things that social media has done that even, you know, in the last 10 years, it's been a complete revolution in terms of liberating the power that individual people have in having a real voice, and not just in the local community or even at a national level, but at an international level. Today, because of the technology and, you know, through the power of social media technologies, it's possible to connect with people with different cultural backgrounds, even with different languages to you, and still communicate in an effective way. I know that there's technology that's currently being developed, which is almost like, I don't know if anyone's ever watched Star Trek here and seen the universal translator, but that technology is almost a reality in terms of even if two people from different parts of the world don't speak the same language, because of technology, they can still communicate with each other effectively and have a very meaningful conversation and develop, you know, interesting campaigns or raise awareness of important issues to them. And on the point of languages, which Jojo was talking about as well, I think as well as giving a voice to people with from different languages, I think social media is also actually proving to be a way of reviving languages which were lost or potentially close to extinction. And there are a number of examples that I've come across where social media is, you know, providing people the opportunity to save languages which otherwise could be lost. And then just talking about the wider sort of issues in terms of human rights and so on, if you think about the last 18 months or so, the tremendous impact that the Arab uprising has had, and the fact that ordinary people on the ground have effectively led global news bulletins around the world with their pictures, their videos, their eyewitness accounts. This would not have been possible, you know, even a few years ago, and that, I think, just shows you the power that the individual now has.
Thank you so much. That's actually very, very important. And as you are saying that, we are starting to get some questions, actually. And one question is asking a very fundamental, basic question. What can I do for human rights? What do you think, High Commissioner? What can people do?
Mona, I think that each and every one of us can do something within the circumstances in which we find ourselves. It's important to know and demand your rights, to defend your rights, and also to demand and defend the rights of others. If you are claiming the right to dignity, you should respect the dignity of others. And remember that human rights starts at home. Begin by dropping prejudices and by being respectful and courteous to those closest to you. And I would like to share all your experiences, your personal experiences in taking part in public life, to defending rights.
Well, thank you so much, High Commissioner. That brings me to you, Claudia, in Brazil. For persons with disabilities, what do you think can be done? And what do you think, what can people with disabilities can do to claim their rights? And what can be done for people with disabilities?
É importante estar falando sobre direitos humanos.
It's important to talk about human rights.
Não somente para as pessoas com deficiência.
Not only for people with disabilities.
Porque todos nós somos iguais.
Because we are all equal.
A partir do momento que tem sua própria voz.
So everybody has their own voice.
E suas decisões próprias.
And they can take a part on decision making upon their own lives.
para ter uma participação plena na sociedade e na vida pública.
So people can take full participation in social life, in public life.
Então, as pessoas com deficiência precisam ter empoderamento.
People with disabilities would need some empowerment
para conseguir recursos e os seus objetivos.
so they can look for resources and achieve their goals.
Para futuro melhor, de boa qualidade.
So they have a better quality of life in their future.
Na acessibilidade.
Accessibility is a point.
E também todos os direitos de eleger.
All their rights also elect.
Membros políticos.
Be in a political party.
E também votar.
And also to vote.
Porque, na verdade, sem esses direitos,
without these rights,
não poderemos alcançar os nossos objetivos.
We cannot achieve all of our goals.
Quando se fala na inclusão, é como todo.
When you talk about inclusion, we talk about a thing as a whole.
Não importa a raça, etnia, sexo e idade.
No matter gender, age, race.
Thank you so much. Yes, High Commissioner.
What Claudia is telling us is an important lesson that people with disabilities no longer tolerate being treated as charities. They want to demand and assert rights. So thank you, Claudia.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you, High Commissioner, about this basically stressing this very basic principle of equality, which is, I think, at the core of all our human rights. Thank you so much for that. Harpreet, I would like to ask you a question. You are an expert in business and human rights. We have a question that came to us from one of our colleagues in Twitter. He's asking, do human rights really work when the gap between the rich and the poor keeps deepening? And in particular, I'm thinking in particular with regard to corruption, with regard to poverty, with regard to development. You are an expert in this area. What are your thoughts on this issue?
I think human rights movements definitely helps in reducing corruption. You know, human rights movement ensure non-discrimination, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, access to information, access to education, access to information on companies' actual human rights impacts, which is definitely the first step in reducing abuses and promoting transparency and accountability among stakeholders, and helps in combating corruption. Also, if the due diligence process is conducted with a truly right-based approach, it would pay full attention to the full range of people impacted, including minority groups, people with disabilities, or individuals, ensuring meaningful consultation, participation, and inclusion while minimizing corruption. And I think also this whole needs for the information makes it all the more important that access to internet is both widespread and unfiltered or uncensored. So yeah, definitely human rights movements play a role in reducing corruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. Again, it's another aspect of equality, which people who are being prejudiced because of
Exactly.
because of they live in particular situations or particular of poverty. And Ujo, you have particular experience in development issues and in poverty reduction issues. Would you like to share your thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, Mona, I can say some few words on that as well, because I mean it's known that there is a strong correlation between participation and sustainable development, or exclusion and poverty. And that's why, if I can bring the case of minorities, that's why they are the poorest of the poor in many countries. because of their exclusion or lack of representation in decision-making bodies. Sometimes development programs are designed in a way that do not take into account the specific circumstances of minorities. And in some cases, actually, development programs are designed in a way that could even exacerbate the situation of minorities. One good example that I would like to bring to your attention here is the contemporary large-scale land acquisitions, or what is called land grabbing, where minorities and indigenous communities are displaced from their land in order to provide for large-scale investors to produce food for exports. East Africa countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania are good examples in this regard. So I think this really underscore the importance of today's theme, that is inclusion and participation is good for sustainable development, is good for peace and security. Thank you.
Trusha, may I turn to you now? You know, transparency is key in countering corruption. And of course, the role of media in this connection is really important. So what can you tell us about social media and corruption? What do you think the social media can do or can help in countering corruption?
I think one of the things that social media, as I mentioned earlier, was that because it allows people to actually have effectively a digital microphone to tell the world issues that they are facing. And I think that applies to a lot of different areas, but corruption is certainly one example where I think social media is effectively becoming a new way of policing and sort of mitigating against corrupt activities. You know, there have been some examples that I've heard about recently, where in different parts of the world, because people are exposing corrupt practices and telling the world about them on social media and naming and shaming examples of officials or companies or particular parts of local government that are up to bad practice, that they're actually being they're sort of shining a light on these sorts of examples, and as a result, things are being done to try and tackle them. And if nothing else, I think it's the embarrassment factor, where because people are exposing bad practice, that it's almost embarrassing corrupt officials, politicians, whoever they are, into behaving well, because I think they are more aware of the risk of being exposed, which I think is far greater than it's ever been before. And I think social media is a big part of that.
Let me turn to you now, High Commissioner. We have a question from Alex Curley. You asked, Alex, how can we make people care about human rights when they take them for granted? Human rights are often taken for granted.
I agree with you, Alex, that human rights are taken for granted, particularly by people in power, I should say. Those of us who are denied rights care very much about human rights. So the message is we cannot afford to take human rights for granted. Our lives, everyone's well-being, and our future depend on it. Many, I would say too many, have suffered, and they continue to suffer unnecessarily due to the denial of their rights.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. Maybe we have time to take one more question from Twitter. We have one question which says, what can we do for the vulnerable when governments do not follow what they are urged and required to do? Let me start with Claudia. Let me start with you, Claudia, and tell us what can be done, and maybe come then later to you, Harpreet.
I'm sorry.
Claudia.
The question. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What can we do for the vulnerable when governments do not follow what they are urged and required to do? Meaning there are claims out there. There are claims that people are claiming their rights, and yet there are a lot of recommendations out there about how we can enhance human rights. Yet we see that sometimes governments hesitate to act. What can we do as normal people?
Os direitos, mesmo que nós estamos atrás, o governo aos poucos vai reconhecer que a pessoa com deficiência tem esses direitos pleno como cidadão.
Little by little action, step by step, we can make the government see that they get people to have their rights enforced.
Por isso que nós estamos trabalhando dentro das convenções da ONU.
So we work on any conference, any UN conventions there are out there.
E acreditamos que em breve muitas coisas vão melhorar.
We believe the future will be better. Acho que tá bom.
Thank you very much for that. Do you have any thoughts on the same issue, Harpreet? Please.
I think definitely social media plays a large role in, at places where government is, and that also kind of becomes parts of the whole, corruption at the government level, where governments are working with the companies, or there are companies which are, where they have relatives of governments in higher positions. So I think that's where we could, as common public, as general public, we could use social media to highlight some of these cases. And we have right to information, so kind of use right to information to also reach out and find out what's wrong, what's going on wrong at the government level, and also then use that sort of information with the help of social media to reach out to a wider public, and then kind of generate a vote together and let people come together on social media and build pressure on governments. We've seen cases where companies and governments may work together to prevent meaningful due diligence and to provide meaningful participation by civil society. But if general public and if activists and all these people come together and maybe use social media, right information, and other ways, they could be. That's where they could play a larger role in reducing corruption, even by the governments, and making government accountable.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these thoughts. Now, final thoughts, because our time is almost up. I'll start with you, Trushar, if you have a final thought with in 1 minute or less.
Yeah, I guess just in terms of my observation of the way social media technology is improving so rapidly, the barrier for participation is constantly being lowered, and I think that's a fantastic thing. We know that because of technology, a large part of the world is still sort of inaccessible because people don't have the ability to buy technology that would allow them this platform to speak their mind. But I think in the next 5 years, technology will become so much cheaper, so much more accessible, and that could really have a very positive impact in the way that very important key issues that everyone has in the world will actually get a voice and maybe reach the higher levels of influence to actually see this change happening.
Thank you. How about you, Claudia? Final thoughts. 1 or 2 sentences, please.
Eu acredito que esse foco que foi discutido hoje será de grande importância.
I believe the focus of the theme of this full series is of big importance. Everything that was said is important.
Thank you very much. And Audrey, also a final thought, 1 or 2 sentences?
Yeah, I think my final thought would be really a practical note from the last Hangout session, where the independent expert on minorities, Mrs. Isaac, said that some practical ways of empowering minorities is through employment and education, which I fully agree with. So I would say if you are a government agency or a private firm, or UN agency, NGO who gives a scholarship or having vacancies, at least next year you should give scholarship opportunity to a member of a minority group or a job to a member of a minority group in your operational area. And I wouldn't mind to be one of the beneficiaries. Thank you.
Wonderful. Harpreet, also a final thought, 1 or 2 sentences?
I think if we're looking at meaningful participation and inclusion, there is definitely a need to conduct consultations in local languages and make information available in the language people understand, in the language people speak. I would say also there's a need to recognize that many organizations and individuals working on the issues may not call them business and human rights issues. That is, they may not understand the language of GPs, guiding principles, the associated processes may not be familiar or recognizable to some important groups. So definitely there is a need to communicate their relevance to a wide range of people working in different ways on corporate impacts. And I think language plays a huge role in reaching out to public and ensuring that people participate and get included in all sorts of consultations. So yeah, language, I would say, is a key point in reaching out to public and ensuring. Thanks.
Thank you, Harpreet. And definitely the final word on this is to you, Commissioner.
I want to say how much I love the voices I've heard in this hangout, but I want to use Human Rights Day to salute all those who are suffering and in the process of claiming their rights, all those in very many countries all over the world who are demanding their rights and the rights of all those who are suffering violations. They are using their voices to claim their space in the political and economic policies that affect their lives. So your rights, your voice counts.
And thank you all for joining us today. This hangout will be posted on YouTube afterwards. But let's keep the conversation going. Let's not stop here. And don't forget, make your voice count for human rights. You can make it. And on this Human Rights Day, not only on this Human Rights Day, but for years to come. So, cheers everybody and happy Human Rights Day.
Cheers, happy Human Rights Day.
Cheers and happy Human Rights Day.
Bye.